President Macron of France has said his country owes a debt to French Polynesia for nearly 200 nuclear tests it carried out there over 3 decades. In a speech during his first official visit to the territory, Mr. Macron said victims of those tests should be better compensated.
Je pense que c'est tout à fait vrai qu'on n'aurait pas fait ces mêmes essais.
I think it's true that we would not have done the same tests in Cruz or in Brittany. We did the test here because it was far away, it's true.
Parce que c'était plus loin. C'est vrai.
I want to tell you here that the nation owes a debt to French Polynesia.
A une dette à l'égard de la Polynésie française.
Only 63 Polynesians have received compensation for radiation exposure since the tests ended in 1996. Estimates say around 100,000 people were affected, many of them suffering from cancers. Well, I'm joined now by Professor Anaïs Maurer. She was born and raised in French Polynesia and now teaches French literature at Rutgers University. She's written extensively about issues affecting French Polynesia because of these nuclear tests. Great to have you on the program, Professor. Can I start by asking you, how significant is this acknowledgement by President Macron that he owes a debt, or rather France owes a debt to the people of French Polynesia? Will it change the situation on the ground?
Yorana e Maruru, I want to start by emphasizing that President Macron is not the first French president to acknowledge France's debt to the people of Ohinui or French-occupied Polynesia. This had already been done in 2016 by French President François Hollande. Now, as how this will affect the situation on the ground, judging by what happened in 2016, I would remain cautious. After François Hollande recognized that France had a responsibility in developing nuclear-induced diseases in French-occupied Polynesia, the number of rejections by the committee to compensate victims from French nuclear tests went from 98% in 2016 to 96% in 2018. So one remains cautious about what these declarations will ensure.
What we're seeing, Professor, from what the French president has said is a significant acknowledgement of the mistakes that were made by France during that time. Won't that go somewhere towards alleviating the grief and the pain that is being felt by people in French Polynesia?
Absolutely. One of the main issues put forward by anti-nuclear associations and victims of nuclear tests is the way that nuclear tests, radiation-induced diseases, are currently compensated. The important thing to keep in mind is that victims of French nuclear tests that put forward a demand for compensation will only receive compensation if the Commission for Compensating Nuclear Victims decides independently that the individual victim has been exposed to more than 1 millisievert of radiation. However, the data on which the Committee for Compensation relies is very opaque and has not been verified independently by independent atomic scientists. While Macron recognizing France's responsibility,
on that topic of compensation, the fact that he is there, that there is this high-profile event and high-profile visit, is that a sign that more people might get compensation?
As long as President Macron does not address the current system for compensation, this 1 millisievert limit, very little will change for the people on the ground. So far, he has only put forward suggestions on how to better accompany victims in the administrative process, but not to revisit and reevaluate the data according to which radiation is currently calculated. And this is important because of recent studies by Sébastien Philippe and Thomas Tatius after recently declassified archives that show that according to these alternate ways of measuring radioactive fallout, over 100,000 people, which is more than 90% of the population living in Ohinui, French-occupied Polynesia at the time, would have received more than 1 millisievert of radioactive fallout.
Thank you so much for your thoughts this morning, Professor, on that very important issue.